Hi, this is Rabbi Gewirtz from Congregation B'nai Jeshurun in Short Hills. It's my pleasure to share a piece of Torah with you this week, Parshat Vayechi. There's a story of a great king, a king whose hobby was to collect glass sculptures. And he had an extraordinary collection, but one specific piece he loved the most. He would take that piece of glass off of his shelf. He would look at it and admire it. He'd let the sun shine through it like a prism. But one day he dropped it, and an incredible crack, a deep crack, developed right in the middle of the glass, and he became despondent. So much so that he wouldn't leave his room. He wouldn't minister to his economy. He had all of his hopes and dreams wrapped up in this glass. Magicians tried, and wise men tried, and glassmen of the kingdom tried. No one could fix it. And finally, about a month later, out of nowhere, miraculously, at least seemingly so, a glassman from 7 kingdoms appeared. And he's saying, "King, I could fix it." He says, "Please, I'll do anything. Please fix it." So the glassman takes out a chisel and starts to chisel right into the crack. And the king says, "What are you doing? You're going to make it worse." He says, "King, let me do my work." And he chisels and chisels and chisels right into the crack. And several hours later, he blows off the dust from the glass and he hands it to the king. He says, "King, I couldn't remove the crack. None of us can. But I chiseled into it and I created a rose." As the king looked at it, he realized that it became the most beautiful piece of glass in any part of his kingdom, in fact, any part of the world, any place. Well, I tell that story because this week we meet Jacob at the end of his life, in fact, the end of the book of Genesis. And he gathers all of his children for blessing, his grandchildren for blessing. Indeed, Ephraim and Manasseh, that blessing is the same one that we use on Friday nights to bless our own children. But as he brings them all together, we're reminded that Jacob was an incredibly flawed man. So was his son Joseph and his other children. In fact, all of the characters in the book of Genesis are flawed, starting with Adam and Eve and going to Abraham and Sarah, to Isaac and Ishmael, to Jacob and Esau, to Rachel and Leah. All of them had problems. And I had a professor from rabbinic school who used to say, you would never invite any of these characters over your house for Shabbat dinner. And he chuckled and he said, but the reason you do is because when you look in the mirror, you are them and they are you. All of us, like our ancestors from the Bible, are flawed. And the rabbis of old tell us, especially relating to this week's Torah portion, that the point of being flawed or imperfect is not to make believe that you're not to take some kind of scalpel and to try to remove those parts of us like there's some kind of alien growth, but in fact to embrace them. That counterintuitively, the parts of us that are imperfect, they're the parts of us that actually make us most special. That when we dig into what we think is wrong with us, we can evolve as human beings. We can grow as children of God. And that's the whole point. Not to get an A on every paper or to tell everyone that we're the best at everything that we do. We try our best, but none of us are the best at every single thing. So the truth is what we learn most about that glass and about this week's Torah portion is that all of us need to take out our spiritual scalpels, to not remove what's going on inside of us, but to dig into them, to take out cracks, to make them into the roses of what we know we can be, just like that glass that was beautiful, just like Jacob and his children who were beautiful, just like our Torah, which is never a perfect document. It always causes questions, but also causes us to grow and be the very best people we can become. So let that be our goal this week, to be able to take, of course, the scalpel of Jacob, of Leah, of Abraham, of Sarah, of Adam and Eve, of all of our biblical ancestors, and invite them to our Shabbat table to sit around with us, to look into their eyes and remind ourselves that they are us and we are them, and we can only be better by trying to be our very best selves. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.